Well, good morning and welcome to today's lesson out of A Course in Miracles. We're going to be looking at workbook lesson number 19, and this is day 19, and we take but another step back up the ladder that the ego led us down. I like that. We're headed upward spiral, because if we are indeed in God, God is always headed upwards, ever expanding. And so we are in that ever upward expanding evolution in consciousness and awareness, because we are love, and love is never ending. Think about that. You'll be loved for the rest of eternity. The mind can't phantom that. But the unrenewed mind can't. But the renewed mind, absolutely. Before I get into today's lesson, I'm going to preface this lesson with what the Course says about what is the world. I know a lot of times you've heard me say that we've been conditioned by the world, we've been influenced by the world, we've gone in the way of the world, and so the Course has its own perception or own idea of what it means when it says the world. When I say the world, the first thing that normally comes to our natural mind is the physicality of the earth itself, the world, the earth, and all the physical appearance. And the systems that are in the world that are highly responsible for influencing the way people live, the way people think, the way people perceive. That's the general natural propensity to think in that line when you hear the word world, the world we live in. The Course has a more specific definition of the world, and I want to just read through it briefly. And it's on page 413 in the workbook session for Course in Miracle, if you want to turn to it. And it asks the question, what is the world? Okay? And it says, the world is false perception. So the Course's idea of the world, when it refers to the world, is referring to a false perception. Perception has to do with the way we interpret what we see, what we think. It's based on an interpretation. And that interpretation generally is influenced by the mindset, the beliefs, the experiences of the perceiver. In this case being you and me. How do we perceive? How do we, from what point of view are we coming from? So it says the world is false perception. It's not true perception. Okay? but it's a false perception. It's a false way of looking at things. It's basically what it's saying. The world is a false way of looking at things. So when the Course talks about the world, it's not talking about the physical, external world, but it's talking on a level of the mind. Okay? This whole course is written on the level of the mind. Why? Because it is all about mind training, mind reversal. Because there's an understanding that everything that we do, everything that we understand, everything that we say, every way that we act, it all gets its cause from the way that the mind thinks, which leads to the way we perceive, which leads to, our emotional and psychological well-being, and it leads to the way that we act in the world. So there's a progression there, but it all starts here. That's why we are working on here. We're not working on the physical body, but we're working on here, because the body is neutral. The body is just a communication device. It will just carry out what is in the mind. So if we get the mind in alignment, then the body will be okay. That's good news, isn't it? So it says the world is a false perception. It is false perception, perceiving falsely. It is born of error, and it has not left its source, which is error. Okay, so the world was created in error and is still in error. The way false perception is in error, and it remains in error. It will remain no longer than the thought that gave it birth is cherished. It will remain no longer than the thought that gave it birth is cherished. So it's saying that thought is what gave birth to false perception. The Course goes all the way back to the very beginning and says somewhere, somehow, in eternity past, God's creation, which is you and me, made the statement, what would it be like to be separate from God? What would it be like to be separated from the Father? Just like the prodigal son. Give me my inheritance, let me go. Okay, same idea. What would it be like to be separate from God, which is an impossibility? So where did that question come from? How did that question ever enter into the mind of that which is perfect? That which is oneness. Where did it come from? Well, we won't ponder that question in this lesson, but we'll ponder it later. But it says, when the thought of separation has been changed, okay, that's it. See, the thought of separation. That was the thought that gave birth to false perception. It says, when the thought of separation has been changed to one of true forgiveness now, we're going to get into that subject down the road, true forgiveness. It says, when the thought of separation has been changed to one of true forgiveness, will the world be seen in quite another light. The world will be seen totally different. It'll be seen in not false perception, but true perception. And one which leads to truth, where all the world must disappear and all the errors vanish with it. Now, its source has gone. What's the source? The thought of separation. Now that the source is gone, and its effects are gone as well. Cause and effect. It was the thought of separation that caused the effect of false perception, or world of separation, a world of birth and death, a world of inside out thinking, a world of being led down from truth down to falsehood, from light to dark. That's where the whole idea of an opposite was created. Because remember, God is love. Love never changes. There are no opposites. So where did the opposite come from? It came from a thought of separation, which created a physical world with the laws are based on that thought of separation. And so that's why we have all the opposites in the world. In heaven, there are no opposites. In our infinite self, in your true reality, there are no opposites. Opposites only exist in time and space. So here we find ourselves in this prison of time and space, this prison of limitation, this prison of birth and death, temporary. There's a temporary experience of being here in a body, experiencing life at that level of limitation that was created from a thought of separation. This is making so much sense to me. And that thought creates the effect of a false perception. Now I see a world that looks nothing like perfection. I see bodies that look nothing like perfection. Where did that come from? Came from that tiny mad idea of separation. See, we don't need to be as much healed from hurt and pain and discomfort and lack of resources, or broken relationships, or all of the things that happen to us that make us to feel that we've been unfairly treated. The greater need is to be healed from the belief in separation, because it is the root, it is the cause of everything else. See, if you could ever get two people together that have awakened to the reality of their true identity and have let go of the belief in separation, and now they're on a journey of oneness, kingdom thinking, real thinkers, truly perceiving the true perception. These people, you see these people, very few, but they enjoy life. I mean, they have to deal with the same thing everybody else do. But the only difference is their awareness, their Christ consciousness of the knowing of themselves. That regardless of what falsities are in the world, they look past that. That's what true forgiveness is when you look past it, because you realize it's not even real, and you just forgive it. Meaning, you forgive. You are forgiving your prior perception of separation. You give that up for true perception. And so now you can walk in the world. That's what Jesus did. He gave up all the religious bull crap that he faced when he showed up. Even his own people, even his own family. Jesus never thought that he and the Father were separated. But all the religious ideas at the time that he came on the planet was based on a separation from God. God was up there, or in the mountain, or in the temple, or God was separate from humanity. Humanity wasn't worthy to be in the presence of God. That was the thinking. That was the idea. That was a false perception. And so when Jesus showed up and the world had made of God an unloving father, he didn't buy into it. He says it's not true. He said he got a revelation in the early age that God is love and God is light, and in him there is no darkness. So that was his measuring stick for all the religious sages, teachers of his time. Even though he was born, under the Jewish tradition, but he rejected most of it. No, God's not a killer. God is only love. So he didn't embrace any idea. That's why that's why he was in the temple teaching, and all the scribes and Pharisees and all the religious people of his day, they was amazed. They were fascinated with his insight, his wisdom, because they never heard it that way before. It permeated his whole life to the point that wherever he physically showed up, there was a shift in, he showed up as true perception. And wherever he showed up, he filled that space with that energy. And that's why you saw the people react in the way that they reacted, because they had never felt, they've never sensed such a confidence, such an awareness, such a perception. He said, I am the truth, the way, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father but by me. He wasn't talking about him personally. You can't get to the Father unless you come to me first. That's not what he was saying. He was saying no one gets to the Father, or no one will know the Father but by the way that I have come to know him, which was to accept the truth of who God is and who I am. That's the way you get to the Father, by waking up to the truth. And that's easy. It's no big deal. To be awakened, to be enlightened. We make a big deal out of it. Or we run around try to find enlightenment, or try to find, or to have that experience, have people lay hands on us or prophesy to us and all of that stuff. But, it's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the more, like Paul said, he found a more excellent way. What's the more excellent way? The more excellent way is but a recognition. When any of us recognize what is real, what is true, that's enlightenment. You can be sitting down eating your breakfast and have the thought that, oh my God, I am just like my brother Jesus. Where he is, I am. I and my Father are one. There is no separation. There's only oneness. God's not some separate entity from me. He's not out there. I no longer have this separate concept of God. I sit here, stand here, appear here in the person of God. That's how Jesus felt. He knew that. So all power that was in God was in him. All power that's in God is in you. So there is no separation. God lives at your address. He lives in you. He know what size, whatever size shoe you wear, that's what size shoes he wears. Or she. Or it. Remember we talked about the pronouns yesterday. We're going to get into that too, because that is a block to the awareness of love's presence. Wanting to put form to God, or the concept of God. Want to put, agenda to the concept of God. So, the world is false perception. We're not talking about the earth itself when we say the world. But it's a false perception. So wherever false perception is, that's the world. That's the world's interpretation. It says the world was made as an attack on God. Oh my God. The world was made. Notice now, the world wasn't created. Remember, we talked about creation as an extension. And God only can extend what he is. And so if God extends something, it's perfect. But if God's creation turned around and instead of extending what it is and asked the question, what would it be like to be separate from what extended me? And something happens in our thinking. And so instead of us now creating, we make things. We make things through false perception. So it says the world was made as an attack on God. Well, who made the world? It's a good question. It says the world was made as an attack on God. It symbolizes fear. You don't have to look far around you to say that's everywhere. And what is fear except love's absence? So fear is the absence of love. And love is never absent because love is, that's all there is. Because God is never absent. His presence is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. So if the world symbolizes fear, and fear is the absence of love, so it has to be a what? False perception. It's not true. God is everywhere, in everything, omnipresent. We say it all the time. God is omnipresent. So if God is omnipresent, where is the fear? Okay, where is the fear? Thus, the world was meant to be a place where God could not enter. Oh, into false perception. That's true. It says, thus the world was meant to be a place where God cannot enter, and where his son should be apart from him, separated. It's almost like we came here to hide from God. Like Adam hid from God in the garden. God came into the garden and said, hey, Adam, what's up, my friend? Because, he met with him and Eve every day. He said, what's up, my friend? Where are y'all? And Adam hid. Now, they met in the cool of the day up until that point. So what changed? Has God changed? Has love changed? No, because God is real. And that which is real is unalterable. It's changeless. So something happened and this is all metaphoric, something happened in the thinking of God's creation. Something happened in the God extended himself, so he knows what's in Adam and Eve. So why on this particular day he comes into the garden and say, hey, Adam, what's up? Let's hang out. And Adam's hid. Why did he hid? Something happened in his thinking. Nothing happened from pure presence perception, because God is perfect. He never changes his mind. So nothing happened from his perception. Something happened with Adam's thinking. Is this making sense? So the whole idea of separation comes from the idea that Adam separated himself. God, the stories kind of implies, or we've been taught, that God threw Adam out the garden, separated himself from mankind, and was been mad at man ever since. That's the interpretation. That's the false perception that has been made up by mankind, and then it has been taught down through the ages that there was a separation. And so then we grow up with this idea that God is out there somewhere. You hear us say it, the man upstairs. What man upstairs? God is on his throne. Okay, where's that? We talk about God or love in the sense that it's separate from us. Come help us, Lord. Come help us. Come from where? If God is omnipresent, if God is in His creation, then where does He have to come from? But that's the false perception that we have, based on the belief in separation, based on stories like that are, and then the stories get false. It gets misperceived. The interpretation of them gets shared based on the thought of separation. And so now you got a God over here and you got His creation over there, as though there can actually be a separation, but there can't be a separation. God or love wouldn't be love or God if separation was possible. We would go into oblivion, never to be remembered again, if that was possible. Like the fish, if you take the fish out of water, he's a dead duck, boy. Oh, well, not a dead duck, he's a dead fish. Well, if you take man out of God, he's a dead fish. He has no way, and have no way back. But it's absolutely impossible for that to happen. So we've never been without God. You have never been without God, right there in your shoes, right there in your being, right there in yourself. The only thing that has separated you from that reality, the only thing, is a mind that has a temporary belief that separation is possible and it actually happened. But it didn't happen. It did not happen. And when you understand that, you realize it didn't happen for all mankind. So now, taking and embracing that reality, it corrects your perception about everyone. And now you see people for who they are. You see God when you see them. See? To the pure, all things are pure, right? To the one that have embraced oneness, have forgiven, have given up that perception of separation for the perception of oneness, true perception. To him, to that person, he retains he remembers his innocence. He remembers his innocence. He remembers his innocence. Okay. And so through the eyes of his innocence, he sees his brother as himself. Isn't this wonderful? This is wonderful news. What does that do to your thinking? It just causes me to close our eyes on that one. Remember your innocence. Adam forgot his innocence. And when you forget your innocence, you fall into a world of chaos. You fall into a world of fear, a world of limitation and lack. You fall into a sense of separation. You fall into a vibration of vulnerability. You feel so vulnerable. Why? Because you got to now, you embrace body identification. So everything becomes about the body. I got to save the body. I got to protect the body. I got to keep the body from being harmed and keep the body from sickness and disease. I got to dress it. I got to look good. I mean, my personality, my value is in my body. So everything's about the body. Everything turns to the body, and you turn away from your essential self. And then we try to make the body feel good. look good, because that's where we get our value from. And you'll never be happy with that approach. The body can't add to you not one jot or tittle, because that's not its purpose. We are trying to, not you, us. We try, when we're in that mindset, we are making demands on the body that it can't fulfill. We're writing a check that the body can't cash. Yeah. So let me finish this. It says, the world was made as an attack on God. It symbolizes fear. And what is fear except love's absence? Which we know that's impossible. Love is present. God is omnipresent. Love is omnipresent. Thus, the world was made to be a place where God could enter not, and where his Son could be apart from him. Here was perception born. This was the birth of false perception. For knowledge could not cause such insane thoughts. So perception, belief in separation, the birth of what? Perception, the belief in separation, birth the false perception, absent of real knowledge or absent of reality. And then the effect is insane thoughts. Insane thoughts. So that's why we all have access to these sometimes damnable thoughts that we think sometimes. We think, oh my God, if people thought I was thinking that, if people knew I was thinking like that, where'd that thought come from? Thought of separation, fear, murder, all kinds of horror. I mean, and then we look at the people that are psychologically and mentally sick in the world, or religiously sick in the world. They're sick because they're feeding on these thoughts of separation, feeding on these ideas of being separate from their creator. Insane thoughts. You guys know what I mean. We have all kinds of insane thoughts that you would never want to carry out. But you're trying to say, where are these thoughts coming from? Why am I thinking like this? Well, it's not that you're thinking that way. Okay, it's one thing to have a thought. It's another thing to meditate on it and think on it. Okay, those are choices that you're making. Thoughts can't force themselves in to get your attention. You have to willingly give up your attention to them. Okay, but we can't avoid, because of this false perception. Okay, and our mind have access to that. Because there's only one mind. Remember, all our minds are joined. So what your brother's thinking, you thinking too, or what you think, your brother's thinking. There are no private thoughts. There's no private thought. All thoughts are in the light. Remember, God is present. Love is present everywhere. Light is present everywhere. So light is not even aware of darkness. It casts out darkness. It says, but eyes deceive and ears hear falsely. Our eyes deceive us by the way we're seeing, and our ears hear falsely. Because a thought itself, it has an ear. It's our ear. It gets attention when we give attention to it. That's the ear. The ear of thoughts is our attention. You give no attention to it, you can't hear it. She says, now mistakes become quite possible, for certainty has gone. Mistakes becomes possible because of the belief, the perception, the thought, the perceiving, the hearing, and the result of those causes is what we see in this world, which is a world of uncertainty. There's uncertainty everywhere in the world right now. But it doesn't have to be in your heart. You can be certain. We can be certain as we embrace these realities, man. That's why, again, Big Brother said we are in the world of false perception, but we're not of it. In other words, we were not born of false perception. We were born of true perception. That's what he means, see? Jesus was a metaphysic. He that has an ear, let him hear what Jesus was saying, what the Spirit is saying. To the one that don't have an ear to hear, in other words, to the one that has not awakened to the truth, all he hears is a parable. But to the enlightened one, the one that has recognized his true identity in God, and the God in him are one, it's a spiritual revelation. He's given to all of us to know the things of reality. It is given to all of us to know. In fact, it is in all of us. We just have a remembrance problem. And that remembrance block, we have a remembrance block. We have to remove that block to remember who we are as love's presence. Wow. I'm 37 minutes in. This is going to be an hour take, guys, so you might have to watch this in 2 different settings. I haven't even got to the lesson, but this is important for us to understand as we go through these lessons, that when we refer to the world, that we understand what that symbolizes, because it's just a symbol, because the world itself is not real. Why it's not real? Because it has a beginning and has an end. That's part of the criteria for determining what's real. So even the earth itself has a beginning and has an end, therefore it's not real. Okay? So you do not want to make this your home, because your home would be torn up, folded up at some point. It says, the mechanisms of illusion have been born instead. The mechanisms of illusion. So all the mechanisms that we see operating in false perception are built into a lot of the systems in our world. It was built on this false perception. Mechanisms of illusions. Illusion has nothing to do with reality, but one reality. That's all it means. It's only temporary. It's only a temporary play, a temporary dance. It's not real. When you go to the movie and you watch the movie, what do? You don't sit there and live for the rest of your life. No, you get up and walk out the movie. Why? Because the movie is just a movie, meaning that it is temporary. It's subject to change. They're going to stick another film in the projector and it's going to be different in about an hour. So, 30 minutes, they're watching something else. Okay? So it says, these are the mechanisms of illusion. So false perceptions produce mechanisms of illusions, meaning that the mind will work in this pattern of false perception until it is, until something happens, an intervention happens so that the mind can be renewed. And now they go find what has been given them to seek. Their aim is to fulfill the purpose which the world was made to witness and make real. Then we become a player in this false perception. So we play into the mechanisms of illusion by believing, in the separation. And so then we believe in, all the labels of the world, that I am Oliver, I am black, I am, African American, I am, I'm a citizen of the United States, I am of this religion, I'm of this university, I went to this school, I'm of this, political party, I am of this tribe, I believe this way, I work for this company, so I embrace those ideas and da 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 da. So these are the mechanism of illusion. So now we're going out to prove that these mechanisms are true, and it never happens. You wonder why? Why can't things just be right and work right all the time? Why? Because we're working with false perception, mechanisms of illusions. So we go out to make the world, make that which is not real, real, and become witnesses of these mechanisms of illusions by buying into sickness, buying into poverty, buying into separation mindsets, buying into the idea that there's multiple gods, buying into the idea, that we're body identification, buying into the idea that some people are going to heaven and some going to hell, buying into the idea, that God is, requires this of us, wants us to bow down and worship him and him only, and nobody else deserve any worship or praise or adoration. And so we become these, religious bobbleheads. People can't even talk to some of us for us saying God, 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 God. Okay, that's true. But we have to live here. We have to share in our one life. Let's talk about the ball game. It's okay. It's okay. We talking about the ball game. Just two guys talking about a ball game. It's all right. Everything don't have to start with God. That's already a fact. If you're here, everything starts with God. If you go to the bathroom, that's God. If you go to bed, that's God. If you go to work, that's God. If you go to eat, that's God. If you decide to watch TV, that's God. Whatever you decide to participate in, that's God. And to the pure, all things are pure. But to the undefiled, all things are undefiled. But it's not based on true perception. Our defilement is based on false perception, which is based on the idea of separation, which is based on the idea of sin, guilt, and fear. And so we have made a religion out of sin. He that sinned, they say, well, the Bible said, he that sins shall surely die. That's the separation idea. The Course talks about sin. I'm going to do a teaching on that. It has a totally different perspective on sin. It says sin is just an error. And if it's just an error can be what? Corrected. But our concept of sin is what? Eternal damnation. If you don't accept this idea, that idea, you're eternally damned because you're in sin. But the Course says, no, sin is nothing but an error in our thinking. And if it's just an error in our thinking, that error can be corrected. Doesn't that sound so much like love? versus judgment and condemning your brother, condemning the father, condemning his son to eternal damnation. I don't want no part of that. God, unloving Father. I know that this is causing all of us to think at a higher level than we were thinking before we came here to this moment. And in this moment, there's shifts taking place. Shit takes place too. In false perception, you know what takes place? Shit takes place. But in true perception, shifts take place. So we're shifting. This world is not as much in trouble as it appears to be, as it is, it's in transition. The world is in transition. Where is it transitioning from? Dark to light. What is it transitioning from? False perception to true perception. What is it transitioning from? Belief in separation to a knowing of oneness. What is it transitioning to? Back to the original state of being. Back to our original innocence. We're transitioning from guilt to innocence. We're not guilty. Not guilty. Jesus' life was symbolic of the fact that we're not guilty. He said, "It is finished. I have taken care of all of the mechanism of illusions that we believed in." He took care of all of them. He nailed all of them into the nothingness that they are. And he said, "Now you're free. You're like me. You're free. Who the Son sets free is free indeed." Free what? Reality only. Free what? The knowing of the truth only. Free what? Omnipresence. Free indeed. No more pain, no more sorrow, no more tears. He's not talking about when you die. Hey, you can experience that the moment you wake up to these truths. It's not something that is in our future. There is no future. Remember, if we're anticipating the future or we are hanging out and preoccupied with the past, we're not thinking and we're not seeing, and we're definitely not experiencing peace, because it doesn't reside in any of those mechanisms of illusions. It only resides in the presence. In my presence, in thy presence, there is fullness of joy and pleasure forevermore. Only in the present. So even as we are engaged in this workbook lesson 19, which I hadn't gotten to, if we are in this moment, if we're really present and in this moment, embracing the reality of this moment, about innocence, about oneness, about absolute perfection, if we are in this moment, all things are forgiven. A shift has taken place. A recognition has brought us to light and love only. Love only, beauty only. We begin to see everything like in the light. Wow, it's all God, it's all good. He said it was very good. Just close your eyes and see yourself. Some of you, for the first time, you actually see yourself. And it feels good. Sit with that. Sit with these truths. If we're not children of the world, we're not children of false perception. We're children of true perception or Christ consciousness. We're the children of light. We're not doomed to damnation. We're not. And neither is your brother. None of your brothers, whether they have this level of awareness or not. All it takes is for one person to wake up. And when one person wakes up, the entire world wakes up. Why? Because all minds are joined. There's only one of us. I know. Feels great. That's the way real thinkers think. Only in what's real. That which is real cannot be threatened. That which is unreal does not exist. Herein lies peace. This is where you begin to experience that peace that passes, that go beyond the peace that you try to find in the world that doesn't exist. It's all in the way you think. And see, these lessons are teaching us not about just thinking, but how to think. See, if we're learning how to think, how to think rightly, how to think in reality. We need to know how to think. Because we all think. That's an activity of the mind. But if we take that mind and put it in the service for our best interest and teach it how to think, that's the discipline, that's the renewal, that's the rejuvenation that we're exercising, that we're going through. See, when you start thinking like this, everything is good. The music's good, everybody's good. Doesn't matter what's happening in the world, physical world, everything's good. Because if it's happening and if it's not reflecting this innocence and truth that I'm talking about, then we know it's just a movie, just an illusion. People are having fun. People are playing roles like on a stage. But they'll get tired of playing those roles, just like you got tired. I've gotten tired. People get tired, and they wake up one day and say, hell, there's got to be a better way than this. There's something that I don't know. And if the knowing of it, if I knew it, I'd be feeling different. I'd be acting different. I'd be loving differently. And that's true. And that's why we're here. We're engaged in this. We've become students of this. Something drew us here. You drew yourself back to yourself. God extended himself. So when we have this desire, we're just coming back into the oneness that we are. Just like the waves on the ocean, they go out and they come back into the ocean of love. Just like the sunbeams. The sunbeams go out as though they, are reflections of the sun, and then they come back into the sun. Yeah. We went out like prodigals at some point in our life, but we have returned home, back into the heart of light and love, where light and love would have us be, because that's our true habitat, our true nature. And so we carry this message. That's what Jesus meant. He said, now when you get this right, true perception, the knowing of yourself, he said, then you become the light of the world. That's what he meant. You are the light. We carry these realities into a world of false perception. And we are part of the reconciliation, helping. We're co-laborers with light, helping to dissolve the darkness. So we walk in love. We walk in this light and we walk in love. It helps dissolve and gives our apparent brother an opportunity, a space to but remember himself, to but remember the truth. We do that for each other. As sight was made to lead us away from the truth, physical sight or false perception was made to lead us away from truth, it can be redirected Sounds become the call for God, and all perception can be given a new purpose by the one whom God appointed Savior to the world, which is you. God appointed you in your generation to be Savior to the world. And so because you've taken the false perception and you redirected it to true perception. And so you've been given new purpose because you've been appointed. All humanity have been appointed. But once you are appointed, you be on your journey. Don't condemn your brother because we can finally come out of darkness. No, we now become what? We become a emissary for our brother. We become our brother's keeper. We become the bridge for our brother to cross over from false perception to true perception by our love. It says, follow his light and see the world as he beholds it. Follow love's light and see it as love perceives it. Follow God's light and see it as God perceives it. It says, hear his voice alone in all that speaks to you, and let him give you peace and certainty, which only comes from love and light, which you have thrown away, but heaven has preserved it for you in love's presence. It says, let us not rest content until the world, meaning false perception, has joined our changed perception. It says, let us not be content until false perception has rejoined with true perception. Be not content till your brother has joined with you. That's what he's saying. Be not content until all of humanity has awakened to this reality. It says, let us not be satisfied until forgiveness has been made complete. Forgiveness is a tool that's only useful here in the earth, in time and space. There's no need for forgiveness in heaven. So forgiveness is a temporary tool too. Meaning it's what? It's an illusion, but it's a useful one. It's the most useful one. Because when we truly forgive, what we realize is that we are what God is. And so is all the creation. And so we look past all the false perceptions that we may have practiced for a long time. And we see it for what it is. We see now that camera that I'm looking through for what it really is. I see the screen for what it really is. I see the chair for what it really is. I see the tree over there for what it really is. I see the television over there for what it really is. That's why we do these exercises. And now we're seeing with true perception. And we see that everything is God. Everything. It's all good. It's all good. Because it's all God. I'm finishing up this. It says, and let us not attempt to change our function. Remember, we're the changeless ones in our reality. We are unalterable. We're not talking about the body, because we're not body. We're talking about our essential self, which is spirit, which is awareness, which is consciousness. It says, let us not change our function. It said, we must save the world. We're the saviors of the world in our generation. And not to save the world from drinking or smoking or, sex outside of marriage or, some hatred. That's not what we're saving the world from. We're saving the world from the cause and from the effects of the cause, which is mechanical illusion. We're saving the world from the dream of separation, belief in separation. We're not going out here trying to clean people up, get them to stop doing this and that. No. We may find them as in that condition. But our goal is this. Is to give them what's been given to us, and that is this revelation that we are light, that we are love, and at our essential nature, there is no darkness in us. And then they'll make whatever adjustments they want to make in life. If you go trying to fix adjustments in people's lives, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Without changing their mind, good luck with that. It's got to be about the renewing of the mind. Okay, I'm about finished. It says, for we who made it. Ooh. Notice now, I didn't say God who created the world. I know the first verse in the Bible say in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Okay. I understand that. But here it says, for we who made it what it is by our thinking. If God creates anything, it's perfect. So it would have to be our false perception, our wrong thinking, our belief in separation that made it what it is, a mess. Like the illustration I gave before. The little 2-year-old left alone in their room for too long. Parents come in there and every piece of clothing in the closet, every piece of clothing in the drawers, every piece of item on the dressers, in the bed, everything was taken and thrown in the middle of the floor by that 2-year-old. And the parents walked in and said, who made this mess? Because the parents created this beautiful environment called a nursery. Beautiful. And the child was left in the room too long by himself or herself. She made a mess. That's what we did with this place of beauty we got. But we're reversing that. We're reversing that. One person at a time, right? And it starts with ourselves. And it says, for we who made it must behold it through the eyes of Christ consciousness, through the eyes of God, through the eyes of innocence, through the eyes of purity, that what was made to die, false perception, can be restored to everlasting life just by our shift in perception. Just by our shift. Just by your shift from false to true perception, you see the whole world is saved. Then there's no pressure. If the world's already saved, then there's no pressure. So you just go and be the light that you are. And along the way, you begin to look to your left and the right, and you see brothers following you and sisters following you. What? They resonated to the light. Wow, what a wonderful revelation. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I'm going to have to make a separate video for our workbook lesson 19, because this is going to have to become a lesson in of itself on what is the world. And so I'm going to make one just for lesson 19. Stop this one right now. But I'll make sure that you guys get it, okay? This has been so much fun. I'm so excited about you. That if you're listening to this, that means you've been attracted to this, because you have opened up a portal in your heart to say, I know there's a better way, and I want that better way. I want the knowing of that better way. It's not the way. Always really going to lead to our awakening, but this is just a unique expression that I have, nothing special, just unique. We're all unique. It's just my expression. And I hope it's helpful. I love you so much. Until next time. I love you.